Shows how her family came down and the history of her family. So we're real excited today. We've got Paul here with all the videos. We're hoping that the DVDs will be good, and we'll put them on Facebook and maybe sell them at the Historical Society later in the museums. And so we're ready to start, Lynn, so come on up. So you got your camera, your microphone, you know how to get it.
No. Coolmade Dairy started in the early 20s or so, and what is so nice about when Carol asked me to speak on Coolmade Dairy, I said, well, how about let's talk about the French people who worked in the dairy and the good times that they had that I remember. And in our dairy, we had several French-speaking employees. They spoke good English. I didn't have any trouble hearing them. And they had some exciting times. I wasn't part of all of them, but I could hear the music. And I knew there was a lot of joy there. And I just want to tell you some of the families, the men who worked in our dairy, and if you know any of them, I would like to have their phone numbers or addresses or whatever you have, because I haven't seen them in a long time. First of all, there was Elton Mott and his wife. I'm sorry I don't know the wife's names, but the memory's not too good since this took place in the early 40s. Elton Mott had a son named Alvin. I think he was a banker. And a daughter whose name was Betty Jane. And she worked at the Phelan Company in Beaumont. I met her several years later. Then there was Otto Absher and his wife, don't remember her name. They had a daughter named Eva Marie, and I think they had another daughter, but I'm not certain about that. If you know any of these people, you be sure and I put some copies over here. I'd like to be able to get in touch with them. Then there was Whitney Hebert. Now, that's the name I knew him by, but you know there was a rice dryer on the Finette Highway, and it was called Hebert Brothers. And there was a veterinarian out there too. His name was Hebert or Hebert, whichever way you want to call it. I knew him as Hebert. He had a daughter named Doris, and she was older than I was, but she was a lot of fun. And she came and visited in our home some. I remember her. Then there was Camille Richard, and he had a big family. I don't remember his wife's name. He had an older son named Lester, a daughter named Esther Marie, or Esther Marie. I'm not sure which the spelling is correct. Camille Jr., Philogene, who later was a meat cutter in one of the grocery stores, another son named Donald, and a very young daughter, and I don't know her name. Then one of the employees that came to work in our dairy late in the operation of the dairy was Aldous Luke Lejeune and his wife, and he had a son named Felton, and Felton and his wife Wavy lived in Nederland for a lot of years, and Wavy worked with home demonstration people, and she served a lot of dinners around Jefferson County. And then Luke Lejeune, that's where I knew his name, had a daughter named Eva Marie. Eva Marie was a handicapped girl, and she was a little older than I was, but every time her birthday came around, it was a real party with all the music and singing and cakes, and it was a fun time. I didn't have to stay long, but I really enjoyed it. And I was so hoping that today there would be a more of these French people that I knew here, because there were a lot of people in Nero who have French blood in their ancestry, and we can be very proud of their contributions to Nederland and the area. There were lots of dairies in Nederland and Jefferson County at one time, and I knew several of them, and it's just changed so much, it's hard to believe. At one time there were about 21 dairies in close to Nederland. Now there are none in Jefferson County. So that's the way it goes. Things change. We made hay back then with a pitchfork. Today we have modern equipment.
Well, who bought all the milk from these dairies? I mean, the population was not like it is now.
No. Some of my relatives helped build the jetties off Sabine Pass. The Dutch people were not big people. I don't know how they did it. I never asked them, but when you go down there and see those big granite boulders, somebody did some work. The railroad tracks, they didn't have steam shovels very much. They had horses, mules, slips. And a slip carried about a half a yard of dirt at a time, and it took a driver. Now, haven't we changed a lot?
Hi everybody, my name is Cheryl Miro, and I came to be with you guys because I was actually at the windmill, and my husband and I were just walking around and do like the historical things. So Carol and I got to visit him because I visit with everybody everywhere I go. And I told her that I had French people in my family too. My dad is French. And you know, I started thinking and digging for all of these things that I was going to tell you all today about my heritage. And I guess as a young person, the older people tell you about it, and you hear half of it and half of it you don't. And you don't realize that you're actually living your heritage and the things that are important to you every day. And for my family, it was God, family, country, probably the same things as every other culture. So my dad was a shipyard worker. He worked in the shipyard. They were hardworking, blue-collar people. And so I started looking on how the French people got here. So I'm going to tell y'all what I found out about that. Because what was told to me from my family was, I never got specific dates, so I wanted to be as accurate with you all as I could try to be. But we were told that our family came here from Nova Scotia because the French people settled in a colony in Nova Scotia, Canada. And they were actually exiled from there and ended up in Louisiana, which was a Spanish settlement at the time. And that is how my people came to be here. And they were in Jennings and Crowley, Louisiana. Y'all probably got a lot of people from Jennings, Crowley, and all of that. And Carencro, too. So my dad always told me we had some family that was from Carencro, Louisiana. That's where some of the Neros were from. Because that was actually probably the hardest for me to find was the Nero part of my family. The Boutans were easier to find, Prejeans, and Abshires as well. So the Cajuns are a group of people largely residing in southern Louisiana, a region rich in the history of several cultures. Acadians, French settlers from Atlantic Canada, today they celebrate a diverse, vibrant culture unlike any other culture. I won't sit here and read all of this to you all. I'm sure y'all know some of this history. They navigated the Mississippi River. People from other cultures, including the Spanish people, Canary Islanders, Native Americans, descendants of African slaves, and French Creoles from the Caribbean, settled in Louisiana. People from these different cultures interacted with each other over the years and formed the modern-day Cajun culture. The word Cajun itself is an evolution of the word Acadian, in a French-based Creole language that became widely spoken among the settlers in this area. And I visited a place, Vermilionville. It's a museum. I don't know if any of you have ever got to visit it. Very interesting. Very interesting. It's a little town set up with the way that the Cajun people live. They have a fiddle player inside the school. He sat and visited and told the story of the Cajun people, and on the board it said, "I will not speak English, I will not speak English." Because if the Cajun students spoke English, they had to write out lines, because it was actually banned at one time for them to speak their native tongue. So that's why, as a culture, we've lost a lot of our language. My great-grandmother, when she came here, spoke fluent French. And my grandfather knew some of the words, but he didn't speak it to us. So that was lost on us. We listened to the Cajun music, and we sang the song, but we didn't know the words. We didn't know what we were saying. We just knew we liked the beat, for sure. So we definitely got that part of it. It was outlawed for the students to speak. It was, the Constitution in 1921 required that schools be taught English statewide. And so because they used to school their own children, they were a very closed-off community. They wanted to keep their people French-speaking, that particular kind of thing. So like any other culture, wars brought people away from home. They started marrying from other cultures and that particular kind of thing. So over time, that's how things changed. Then we talk about the Cajun music. This is an age-old battle for Cajun music. So you have your Cajun, which is more like a country music, and then you have your Zydeco, which is with a heavier beat, and that probably comes more from the Creole people, which are the African slave descendants and that kind of thing, and Spanish people. So that's a lot of Wayne Toots, if any of y'all know about that. And so we talked about the industry and what Cajun people did. And what I read about that too is that as far as industry went, they were farmers. They definitely lived off the land and those particular kind of things. Some people considered to be Cajun a derogatory term because they were looked at as maybe lazy or not concerned about this or that, which really it was, they were concerned about their families. They wanted to be with their families and spend time with their families and that particular kind of thing. More of like a balance between work and family. So in Louisiana, because I've met people from Louisiana that were from northern Louisiana, and they said they never even met a Cajun person. So, you know, growing up too, I spent a lot of time in New Orleans just because I like the music and the culture and digging into my own history. That's actually not Cajun country. Cajun country is southwest Louisiana. It consists of probably about 22 parishes. And in the middle of these parishes is really the heart of Cajun country. They moved away from the Mississippi when they started selling off their land up through the central part of the country. And there's a lot of farming that still goes on there. I didn't realize that sugarcane was such a big, huge industry for the Cajun people, and now I know that because recently I visited La Piscine, and they have a distillery there, and they use the sugarcane there to make the rum that they sell, and it's Bayou rum they actually have in La Piscine. So that's what I have on the people as a whole. As far as my family, my daddy was a shipyard worker, like I said. And you know, my sisters and I just talked about it when people ask, you know, we're watered down Cajun because we have other ethnicities as well. My grandmother was Italian. She was, and so when she fell in love with my grandfather and married him, his mother, who was very French, taught her how to cook. So she cooked in that particular way. So when we talk about gumbo and that kind of thing, there was always a whole bunch of us. There was 5 of us. We had 5 people. We always had extra kids living in our home. And as far as what my grandmother cooked for gumbo and that kind of thing, we couldn't afford limited seafood gumbo. If they cooked anything, it was squirrel gumbo, duck gumbo, and those kinds of things. Whatever you killed, could clean, and whatever, that's it. the food was about. And we had rice and gravy with every meal. I don't know about y'all. So I went to my aunt, and I asked her about our history and that kind of thing. And she was able to pull out this letter for me. So I'd like to read this. I hope it doesn't take too much time. It goes over my great-great-grandparents that were Bhutans that came here way early in the 1900s. And as Mr. Kumale spoke to the fact how things have changed and industry has come in, that particular kind of thing, I remember being little in Port Neches when some of the land was still open and there wasn't houses just everywhere. We grew up across the street from Woodcrest Elementary. It used to be just woods back there all the way to the cemetery, and we played back there all the time. This is the life of Joseph and Emmadita Bhutan. In or about 1879, Joseph Bhutan and Emmadita Pregene were married in the vicinity of Jennings and Crowley, Louisiana. The exact location is unknown. 11 children were born to them, 2 of which died in infancy. Joe and his family lived in Jennings, where he owned and operated a cotton gin. He later sold the cotton gin and moved his family to Texas. There he built a country French-style adobe house at LaBelle on Taylor's Bayou. He sold this house and moved his family to Beaumont. They lived on a farm on Taylor's Bayou. He had moved about a city block down the road from the adobe house he had built earlier. His son Aldous and his family were living there at the time. It was here that I remember living with Grandma and Grandpa. At that time, only 5 younger children were at home. Their 4 older children had already married and left. The house was, as I mentioned earlier, a country French-style 2-gable house. It had 3 rooms across the front of the house. The inside walls were whitewashed with lime. The outside of the house was unpainted. Facing the house, the room to the far left was a big kitchen, and there were 4 bedrooms that accommodated the sum of the 8 people that lived there. Facing the house, the room to the far right was Grandma and Grandpa's room. This served as a parlor for visitors as well. Grandma and Grandpa tended garden. We always had lots of fresh vegetables. The 3 boys, young men at the time, worked the fields. In the fields, cotton, sugarcane, corn, sweet potatoes, millet, and watermelons were grown. Aunt Norley was the cook. This was my great-grandmother's sister who lived with them at the time. The kitchen was a big room. There was a wood stove, pie safe, a big square table with benches on 2 sides. There was also a work table with some extra chairs. In the evening after supper, Grandpa and the boys would play the fiddle and the accordion. And on occasion, they would play for neighborhood dances, which I thought was very interesting. My mother, and it says Lucia, but they pronounced it Lucia, had varied jobs around the house. She would milk 13 cows every morning before breakfast and every evening before supper. This was so we could have fresh, warm milk with our meals. You see, there was no such thing as ice refrigerators in those days. After breakfast, Lucia would clean the house and make beds. She would then sit down and sew. In those days, there was no ready-made clothes. Everything had to be handmade. She sewed such like things as sheets, pillowcases, and mosquito bars, which were the nettings that went over the beds, I found out. Kitchen towels and hand towels, men's shirts, underwear, nightshirts, jackets. To keep the 8 of us clothes, Mama's pedal sewing machine singing all the time. In the summer when the well was low, we had to conserve water. Grandma would go to the bayou to wash the clothes. They used a board 2 foot by 3 foot to lay the clothes on. They would soak them with each piece and beat them with a paddle. Needless to say, this was all a day job. The women would cord their own cotton quilts, a set of cords with 2 boards. And it goes on to tell how they did that. On the 4-poster beds, there were the mosquito bars. The mosquitoes would get so bad at times that the white horse would look like he was black. We would carry a smudge pot around the house with smoke pouring out of it to chase the mosquitoes off. After a couple of rounds, we would go into the house quickly. This would keep most of the mosquitoes out. It goes on to talk about how the mattresses were made. They had cotton mattresses and straw mattresses for when it got hotter, so they wouldn't use the 2 at a time. It talks about the baking and all the pies that they would make it all the time. On butchering day, everyone pitched in and helped. They made sausage, hedgehog cheese, boudin, and meatballs. And I remember my daddy, he used to cases on the sausage all the time. So they were always hunting something. He would bring home alligators, and snakes, and whatever. And he brought home one time, I think it was a raccoon that he had killed, because he always skinned everything. He made stuff out of leather. This is pretty funny, I have to tell this, Michelle. And so he used my sister's blow dryer to dry out whatever he had skinned, and she was so mad because he used her black blow dryer. And it kind of smelled like that, so she had to get rid of it. Now, the 13 cows and how they had to be milked, and they farmed. They had all kinds of animals: chickens, ducks, pigeons, turkeys, guineas, rabbits, goats, cows. And they had to have horses too, because when they would leave with all of these goods and take them to Beaumont, it took them 2 days to get there, and they had to use the horses to go. Oh, look, that's to the end of it. So this is the way I was like, yes, ma'am.
Did you happen to find out why they painted the inside of the house with lime?
No.
And what is lime used for?
I don't know that. I really don't know. I have, I'll find out about that. The other thing that I found interesting too was in the city, as far as the mosquitoes went, all of their outside ceilings are painted blue. And I asked about that, and they said that that was to make it look like the sky, and that had something to do with the mosquitoes.
Well, what is lime used for? What was it? I know it's not a good thing, is it not?
Maybe it had something to do with the acid in the lime that helped whenever they were whitewashing stuff. That
Keep
kept
it
it.
down.
Yeah. It kills and Piros, they used Piros to get around the diode and that kind of thing. My daddy's best friend was a Como. They had a boat shop and they used to build Piros together. So it was like a small canoe to get around the water.
I just wanted to add a little bit to coming from Nova Scotia.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if they just really planned to go right there, but they dumped them out in the swamp. That's why they eat all these different bad look stuff they eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was a long time ago.
Yes.
But my dad came from, up to Mississippi, but, anyway.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I kind of remember most of what you're talking about. But
Wasn't it the British who ran them out?
Yes, and they were persecuted for their religion because they were Catholic and still are.
my grandmother had 9 children, her husband died. So my father and 4 of his brothers came to Texas. That's how they came over this way.
When they,
Mexico is just over.
yes, so industry brought so many people here from every walk of life. As far as coming from Nova Scotia to here, a lot of probably half of everyone that came this way, they came from a climate like that in Nova Scotia, that they had been settled there for a long time to southwest Louisiana and
Out
Swamp.
there, and there was all these mosquitoes.
So they got wiped out by malaria, and that's what happened. So,
And they were down in that swamp, so they ate all those animals.
yep. So that's what I have for you guys today. I did bring some music if y'all want to listen to some of the music that I